Hello, David. Well, I'm very pleased to organize today this walkthrough of Salon Zürcher 11 Women of Spirit Part 9 and announce the group show 100 Women of Spirit, which is going to open June 25th. And just to show you the picture of this publication, 100 Women of Spirit. Now I give the floor to the first Women of Spirit, Angela Kehlenbeck.
Good morning. I want to very briefly introduce you to my work. So there is a story behind each one of the sculptures, but it takes a little longer to talk about that. So I would like to explain something about the process of creating them, which really matters to me. And that is, as a person and an artist, I'm always interested in the different facets of a situation and all that isn't being said and wasn't talked about, all the layers. So when I choose a moment, I sometimes with a photo, sometimes there's not, I always go into that moment emotionally and mentally, and I don't do any sketches. I start creating the small human figures from scratch, just like a simple wire and some more thinner wire, layer of tape and layer of newspaper. And so they are kind of growing from the inside out, becoming alive in my hands. And what is so important for me about this process is how I get to a deeper understanding. My perception is shifting through this time. And then there is a great tenderness and empathy for this person, and even for the ones I'm very conflicted about, like the father and daughter scene, for instance. So my fascination with this work is about the fragility of the human body and of the being human, and also at the same time about the resilience and the strength and presence. Thank you.
Now it's Joan Grubin's turn. Hi, Joan.
So I'm going to talk about these pieces here first. They are very small, and they are this scale because the material that I work with tells me that it wants to be small. And I do find as I get older that I'm more able to listen to the work and let it tell me what it wants to do. So I'll just tell you a little bit about the material. It started with sheets of 4 foot by 8 foot sheets of a very thin, special wood material that I put on my tabletops in my studio to protect the tables. And I was making other work that was quite different. Paper constructions, large and small, installations, and I was painting up the paper, and over the course of 15 years of doing that, this wood material collected all these random brush marks, spills, and just all kinds, it's all accidental mark making, which I paid no attention to because I was absorbed with something else. But at a certain moment, you know, there were layer upon layer of paint, and it became, you know, I became aware of just these radiant passages of color. I think you can tell color is very, very central to what I do. And it's really about playing. I think the concept of play is really key. Just playing with these pieces of color, so I deconstruct the material. Can't really say how I arrived at making them this way. That's a bit mysterious, but it's, you know, it's about play, and I can say that as a child I loved making jigsaw puzzles, and I still do. And also in my first career, because I started making art late in the game, in my late 30s, I was a film editor, and that too has to do with putting pieces together, fitting pieces together, and feeling this incredible satisfaction out of taking little bits, playing with them, and finding meaning. So now I'll just talk a little bit about this one. I've made very large installations, bigger than this wall, and medium size, all kinds of installations, mostly with paper. And I find that after making the installation, showing it, exhibiting it, it comes down and it breaks apart into all the different pieces in order to store it. And the pieces hang around my studio. So this one is made with a number of pieces of remnants from other work, and maybe some of them have even been in other works before they arrive in this one. So it's just about playing with things that are lying around the studio, putting them together, looking for some element of surprise. And I have to say at this stage, this whole process of making something that has no utilitarian value is just very mysterious to me. It becomes more mysterious, and I can't honestly say why I do what I do or what this thing is, or we're dealing with the ineffable, and I embrace that. It's a weird kind of knowledge, and it's wonderfully weird, and it's why we all need each other to support each other in doing this strange and wonderful thing.
Thank you, Joan. Thank you. And now we move on to Leigh Burton.
Hello, I'm Leigh Burton, and these are my glazed ceramic figures. And I love clay, and the way I make these is to pick up a piece of clay and squish it and poke it and cut it and dig into it. And each of these movements suggests something. I never have an idea ahead of time. I never know what's going to happen, but it's little tiny fragments that come together. Just like when you look around and see things, you see a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and somehow you put it together as a whole. And I know they look like they have stories and they're narrative, and I think they are, but I don't think there's a specific story that defines them. And I wanted to make very sort of free work, and I wanted the glazes to be sort of independent and flowing. And also, I'm just very concerned about movement and the moment.
Margaret Cogswell. Hi. My drawings are the result of many long walks. They're part of my process of researching and development for my projects. And these walks are through different landscapes. I work much like an archaeologist, looking for clues to the histories of a people, a place, a river. My drawings come out of this kind of process. This piece comes from a recent residency in Searsport, Maine, where I was interested in how climate change impacted the lives of people along the coast. I found an old fishing net and used that because it had embedded in it the history of many years of warming waters and rising tides. In this piece, Swept Away, the net is catching images that I painted inspired by footage that I shot, underwater footage that I shot using my GoPro camera. In this piece, again from long walks, I was walking along a mountain road and came across a painted turtle that hadn't made it safely across the road. I'd never seen a painted turtle before, but I knew they were very sacred in Indian culture, Native American culture. So I picked it up and took it back to my studio. And I decided to do a series of paintings and drawings that would somehow, hopefully, transform its very violent departure. This piece is, the whole series is called Death and Transfiguration, an homage to the painted turtle. This particular piece is titled Departing, Fearlessly Buoyant. Thank you.
Now, Liz Atlas.
Hi, so my work has always been about bringing together sort of divergent elements and trying to find a moment where they can be held together in a conflated way. And so it's about, you know, bringing together the abstract elements of the formal abstract elements, but in a way that can really reverberate and extend the emotive and the physical that evolves from that. And so it's always about both. It may be, you know, there's a physicality, which is really important to me, which relates also to another axis of divergent parts that I bring together, which is that of painting and sculpture. And you know, my background is as a sculptor, and I spent many years only working three-dimensionally, and then at some point I began what you can see here, which is doing rectangular paintings as well as shaped objects. And I believe that, again, I'm really interested in finding a conflation of all of that. And I think in the paintings you can really see a history of the sculpture in the way that I'm engaging with shape and line in a very physical way. And then with the shape objects, I'm engaging with expressionistic, painterly aspects, while I'm also bringing your attention to the fact that it's an object with delineated shape. And so I think that here again, you know, there's a pleasure that I get out of being able to conflate things that are, you know, finding integration with different aspects. And yeah, and so I'm hoping that with this work and wherever it's going to go, that I can create a moment where there's no longer any categories, or there doesn't need to be buckets where you put it in either painting or sculpture. It's something else, or it's both and everything. So thank you.
And now is Jenny Toth's turn.
Thank you. Hi, I love what my neighbor just said, and kind of in reverse, I'm a trained painter who has recently moved into more of a sculptural realm. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about these two pieces. First off, about me, my mother was a memoir writer, and growing up, I learned from her about the importance of speaking from your own experience, and I've always reflected on my own feelings and experiences, and I have felt a deep kinship with animals, and all of my work has had animals and women in the pieces, and often self-portraits. And I'm also I work directly from observation. I have almost a disorder of not being able to draw or paint out of my head. They're very goofy when I do that. So I really like to look at the source material. So everything you see, even though they're wonky, are actually made in person from the source. This first piece is a self-portrait with a particular bird I befriended during a period when I had breast cancer. I used to go to the Central Park Zoo, and I spent a lot of time watching the birds, and I've never been a bird person, but I became very attached to this particular bird, and I decided to try. I wanted my paintings to stick out, and so I wanted them, I was like, you need to come out more, you need to come out more, and I started sort of pushing them out, and I developed this language of bas-relief. So this is actually a self-portrait with the Central Park Zoo at the Central Park Zoo, and I made it in clay, cast it in plaster, and then began to paint it and thought, no, I want fabric involved in it somehow. So I added fabric as a kind of a collage element. The second one is a particular bird named Scamp at a bird sanctuary in California. And I would sit on the ground and actually try to sculpt this bird as he would kind of look at me, she would look at me and kind of move around. It was a little bit challenging as a subject, as you might imagine. And then I created this sort of nude, abstract self-portrait with a beak looking up at the bird. And I'm very interested in this kind of, sometimes this longing to connect with animals. And also I'm fascinated with this idea of captivity and freedom that I feel in my own life, and I see reflected in animals in captivity and the ways they're personalities shine through, but sometimes the restrictions that they have on them. So there's a lot of sort of personal meaning, but ultimately, I'm a formalist. I look at what I'm drawing from. I will take certain poses and really struggle, and as you can imagine, there's lots of awkward adventures as things collapse, fall over, and including my own self. So it's always an adventure in creating these pieces, but I'm very pleased to be part of this show and share them with you all. Thank you.
Judith Henry.
Hi. My work has always been, the subject of my work has always been people. Our interior selves and our public personas, how we act in public and what we're really feeling inside. In this piece, you can see it's all about the public. And I've even used the icon of smiley faces to connect with our contemporary media. And I brought out some figures as personal. But this work is what I really want to talk about because it's a little bit different. They don't all look like people, and they were done at a very difficult time in my life. Somebody very close to me was sick and dying, and I never had done sculpture before. I had never done anything three-dimensional before, and I was in my studio, and I picked up a paper cup, I picked up a sponge, I cut it up, and I taped it to the cup, and I taped just a big ball of paper to it, and I went to the art store and I asked them, is there anything that I can coat this with to make it really hard? It was just really kind of junky, and the man said to me, oh, you're a teacher, and this is your student work. I said, no, I'm an artist, and this is my work. So, at any rate, he introduced me to Mod Podge, which is a medium that I've painted over and over and over these things, and they're hard as a rock. I mean, if they fall, they don't break. I'm not gonna try it, but they don't break. So they're made out of detritus and junk, things that I found on the street, things I found in my home. This is a spoon. This is just crumpled brown paper, and it's hard as can be. So a lot of them have just crumpled paper, corks from wine bottles. Some of them you can tell what they are, some of them you can't. And I started making them all look like figures, like people, but I thought, people take all different shapes, and I liked the ones that didn't have features of a figure, but were sculptural in a way that a figure is sculptural. So over the period of 3 years, I literally made 300 of these things, which are all lined up and stacked in my studio. So these are just a few of the 300. Thank you.
Barsha.
Hi there. My paintings are I work mostly directly from nature, drawing. I'm a classically trained painter, but I'm also interested in personal responses from my own life, but also global issues that I then try to recreate in a place that I feel I can walk into, so I actually inhabit the world. I love Western perspective. I like playing with Western perspective to build a space with lots of detail, but then I also like the idea of Eastern perspective of the picture plane going up. And so I like that tension between the two, and I try to play with that. This particular painting is called Odessa, and I actually started it the very day Russia invaded Ukraine. It was just my little act of resistance. I wanted to create a field of wheat because Ukraine was the breadbasket of Europe. But I was very interested in trying to come up with some kind of abstracted form of what a shaft of wheat looks like, and I did a lot of drawings trying to make a shape that wasn't too specific, and had a sense of movement. And it led me to actually start cutting out and collaging lots and lots of layers of paper, which is what these waves are made up of, and working in and making very many layers of sort of a dense, I wanted to get a feeling of a dense meadow. I love working on paper because I love the white of the paper, which you sort of see here. I love seeing white, and often people cut out fresh white paper and then glue it back in. because I'm using watercolor, which really is not very helpful when you are trying to work over. This is a screen print. I had received a grant to work with the screen, with the printer, and it's made up of many, many layers of Mylar drawings that I did sitting down on the ground in a garden. I did not like the way the first set of prints were coming out, so I put them aside and ended up doing another edition, but I never forgot these half-finished prints I had. And I've spent the few years working into them, painting into them, cutting out some of the prints and collaging them onto here, so you can see some of another print that I cut out and collaged in. I love the freedom that this gave me because I had multiples, and so I could make lots of different compositions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Phillis, ideal.
Hi, it's really nice to be here and talk about my work, even though I'm a little terrified. My work is a collection of, it's very many layers. It's layered work. And the layers kind of consist of collage, color, gestural marks, and geometric pieces, which are not so evident here. But it's a conglomerate. And I take this conglomerate to my studio, and that is where my color palettes evolve, and also my compositions. I would say, as an overview, that I'm very interested in the language of abstraction, period. All the different modernism trends that come out, abstract expressionism, conceptual work. I'm interested in all of it. But mainly, I'm trying to find my way with all this language to create my own images. And these are, there's quite a lot of collage in this, and I'm a big fan of collage because I've experienced that sometimes when I'm stuck on a painting, I go to a smaller piece and I kind of literally feel free to make a mess or do whatever I do. And oftentimes that piece can be introduced into a stuck painting, and it gives the whole painting meaning and punch, or says to me, this painting's lousy, you know? Paint that whole part out and develop this piece of collage. So I find it to be very useful. It's kind of a mentor of what I'm doing. The little one is, I'm not sure, you know, I don't know how to ascribe what these are about. They're about a lot of things, and they're intuitive. And I try to stay in intuitive space while I'm working. And so the paintings, I don't know if the paintings tell me or I tell the paintings, but here they are. And the little one comes from a little bit different place. I was born, the big one too, resonates on the space that I grew up in. I grew up southern New Mexico, which is all about sky. It's really flat and it's all about sky. So I've always been comfortable with a lot of space. And the little one resonates because I've always grown up with retablos. And I'm very comfortable making very small paintings.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Marietta Hoferer.
Hello, I'm Marietta. I grew up in the Black Forest for David, a rural, very rural and dark area in Germany, close to the French border. And so I grew up there, and I studied in Berlin sculpture before coming to New York City. I came for 1 year to study in New York. I came with my suitcase for 1 year, summer clothes, winter clothes, and that was it. And so I was looking for a material or how I could work in a sculptural way in New York. This is 30 years ago. And I found tape in the hardware stores, in 99-cent stores, stuff like that, and I was captivated by the different qualities of these cheap tapes. I preferred transparent or white, and it was a discovery for me because in Germany at the time, 30 years ago, they had only one brand, one tape, that was it. So I was excited to find a material to play with and to find a way also to work in a sculptural way, but also on 2D. So I worked mostly on paper with tape, cutting tape, and do my explorations. And 1 year in New York, I stayed almost 30 years. And but I always wanted to live in the south of France, somewhere where it's light and another quality of life. That's where I'm living now, and have studios there with my husband. But during my time in New York, I continued investigating the material of tape. I think most of my work was on paper with transparent, or I worked more in the white on white range for the most time, and discovered, but fairly recently, holographic tape, and then I fell in love with black tape. So it's something I'm always looking for very simple materials that have an interesting quality. So it's a simple method, nothing complicated. I just cut tape in thousands of little squares and stick them on either paper mostly, or now I work more with panels also. And yeah, I'm very pleased to have the opportunity for the first time to show a black piece, because that's a new direction here in New York with Granwell at Gallery Circle. Thank you.
And we're going to end the walkthrough with Alexis Granwell.
Hi, how are you? These are three semi-new pieces dating from 2019 to 2021 to this one, which I finished last month. And these are all made with handmade paper, so I'm very much interested in physicality, tactility, intimacy, and how information holds emotion on the surface. So these are made with handmade paper, cotton sheets, with linen pulp painting, and then they're wrapped around the form to create the skin. So a lot of this work is really about a kind of like coming together, falling apart, cyclical aspects, both from the fibers themselves being beaten in a Hollander beater, formed into a sheet, then made into the skin that really activates the surface. Color is embedded deep into the surface, and so you kind of see this emergence within the forms. And these forms represent, I would say, they very much reference the body, the psychological experience. A lot of these come from body visualizations. And then within the pandemic, I was making some of these forms in my home. So domesticity definitely has a reference, like that one has a stool embedded at the bottom. This one's based on another piece of like found scrap metal that I welded, and then has this kind of flowering form. And then this one over here, there's a brick manufacturer near my studio. And then I was kind of thinking about Brancusi here and the stacking of form as like a reference to history, stacking of form referencing like maybe ruination and collapse. So these are, you know, three pieces from different attitudes and different experiences, but all the work really comes out of the daily life. I also do a lot of poetry writing, the Zuhitsu form, which is based in fragmentation. So I love seeing these groupings as a family made in different points in my life and how they can begin to speak to each other. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, David. Fantastic. Thank you very much. Sure.